So today you are going to be doing a 2-point perspective drawing. So this is the next step in perspective drawing for art foundations. You are going to need to have a 12 by 18 finished piece using pencil, 2 vanishing points, perspective buildings and roads. Please make sure that there are no people, trees, cars, lettering. Just like with the 1 point, you are going to need a T-square, a triangle square, tape, ruler, drawing board, and of course, your piece of paper. As always, make sure that that T-square is up against the edge of your drawing board. Line up your paper against the edge of your T-square. Make sure that it is fully tapped against that edge, that there is no gap between the T-square and your drawing board, and then tape the top. Remember, this must be done every single time you are working on this project. Failure to do so will mean that none of your buildings will be in proper perspective because your paper isn't straight. So just like with the first 1 point drawing, we need to draw a horizon line. So again, generally towards the top third of your paper. And unlike last time, we are not going to put our vanishing point in the center. We are going to put it at either side of that horizon line that we just drew. Then you're going to draw your 2 roads. Now the problem is that we have 18-inch rulers, and when we line those up, they are too short. So don't use the rulers to draw your diagonal lines for your road. Use your T-square. That way you're not having to move the ruler around. Go for the approximate corner of your paper and draw your line. Notice when I use the ruler, I'm spreading out my points of contact, trying to put it near, the center of that ruler, pushing down hard so that ruler does not wobble on me. So now I have what looks like. So now using the magic combination of a T-square and a triangle square together to create a vertical line, I'm going to put that right dead center of that X. That is the corner of my building. Then I am going to take my ruler and I am going to connect the right side of that back to that right vanishing point. I'm just drawing a small line here. This isn't a building that is going to go all the way to the vanishing point. Then using that T-square triangle square combination, we are going to put our other vertical line down. Now, alternatively, you can start with that vertical line. So the side of the building, you can make your vertical line and then connect it to that left vanishing point using your ruler. Remember to line up through those vanishing points. Make sure you've got multiple points of contact with that ruler. The problem is when you underdraw some of these lines, I think it's far easier to erase than to try to go back and reline everything up. So if you want to err on any side of caution, make your lines just a little bit longer than you intended, just a smidge, not super long. That way you can erase rather than trying to reline everything up. So now we have the front 2 walls of our building. We're going to take our right front corner and we are going to draw that back to our left vanishing point. So to our left vanishing point. And again, a slightly longer line here is not going to hurt the situation at all. Then we're going to take our left front corner and connect it to our right vanishing point. So here we're moving in the opposite direction than we went before. There you go. And now we have drawn a building in perspective. Erase your overhang. Makes your life a little bit easier. So again, using our power combination of a T-square and a triangle square, we are going to do a building next to the building we just created. Same exact methodology here. We're going to do a vertical line. And then we're going to start working on our diagonal lines. Remember, anytime you are doing a diagonal line, it must go to a vanishing point. Okay, it must go to a vanishing point. Now, these two buildings are going to share a wall. So this is a bit easier here because we just have two diagonal lines. Unlike with your 1-point perspective drawing, there will be no perfectly horizontal lines in a 2-point perspective drawing. So just keep that in mind. If you've got a horizontal line in a 2-point perspective drawing outside of your horizon line, you've done something incorrectly. Now we're going to leave a gap, one of those alleys or driveways. So vertical line. Second vertical line. Always making sure that that T-square is tapped up against the corner of your drawing board. Remember, that's one of the number one things we see students do incorrectly. Make sure your tape doesn't come loose, is that their T-square has come loose from the edge of the board, and so therefore some of their lines are incorrect. Again, we're going to line up the front part here to our right vanishing point. Erase any extra bits. And then we need to connect that front left corner back to our vanishing point. Again, just until the edge of the building when we would stop seeing it. We'll also need to do that same thing for our right corner. So again, multiple points of contact on that ruler. Again, you don't need to be murdering the paper with your pencil. Yes, we want a good clean line, but you will be doing a lot of erasing and you're just going to save yourself a lot of headache if you do a reasonable pressure. We're also going to need a ground floor. So that bottom left corner is also going to have to go back to that left vanishing point. And now we have a ground floor and people won't drop out in the basement into the abyss of the center of the earth. If we put up another building on the left-hand side, it will be the exact same process, except now we're going to leave a gap. We're going to go above the horizon line this time. Remember, buildings above the horizon line are different visually than buildings that are below the horizon line. And that is because we can't see the tops of them. So there's fewer lines to draw, but they can be visually tricky. The next thing that we are going to do is we're going to go ahead and widen these streets to be real actual streets. So I'm just relining things up, giving myself a little bit of a gap there so I can put in my streets. Again, I find that the T-square is better for this than trying to do it with a ruler, since our rulers are not quite long enough. Again, you can erase intersections where lines cross just to make things visually more easy on yourself. Of course, we want to still put in some sidewalks. We don't want people exiting buildings directly onto busy hypothetical roads, so put those sidewalks in. Now, what I normally don't recommend doing is doing what I just did with that ruler. Unfortunately, since I couldn't see like the bottom of that sidewalk, I just wanted to make sure that perspectively I wasn't giving myself too large of a sidewalk. It's always easier to draw along that top edge of your ruler rather than this bottom edge like I'm doing right here. You have to crank your hands around in different ways. You're working around things that you shouldn't have to. It's just easier if you draw along the top edge of your ruler rather than that bottom edge. In some cases though, like with these sidewalks, it's a little bit unavoidable. It's a little bit easier when we have the clear rulers, but since we know our clear rulers don't reach, we have to make do with our metal T-squares in this situation, which require a little awkwardness temporarily. So now we have 4 city blocks to work with, and so we are going to need to do more buildings. This entire paper needs to be filled. So again, magic combo, T-square, triangle square, making sure that T-square is all the way up against the board. Again, number one thing students are doing incorrectly is that T-square isn't up against the edge of that board. We're going to do 2 vertical lines. Again, this is going to be the street facing front, and we're going to connect that to our right vanishing point. And again, you're going to see I'm going to start to erase here just because, again, sometimes when we don't have a ton of information or we have extraneous information that we don't need, it can confuse us. So I'm just going to clean up my paper here just a bit to make some of that visualization easier on us. We don't want to make things harder. So again, I'm going to connect my left top corner partially back to that vanishing point and do the same with the top right corner to that left vanishing point. Then to create the back side of our roof, I'm going to connect those 2 diagonal lines with a 3rd diagonal line. Again, I think it's easiest to find the shortest line that you've created and connect it to the longest line. And then go ahead and erase. So much erasing. Please remember, if you run out of eraser on your end of your pencil, we do have additional erasers for you to use, and we highly recommend that you use those. Remember, appropriate pressure is going to make things a little bit easier to erase if we're not murdering our paper with our pencil. So we do still have a couple of lines that we are going to need to do on this building. T-square, triangle square combination. Now notice, again, if you've got one of the triangle squares that has sort of like that, chipped up curved bottom corner, don't use it. Pull your T-square down a little bit so that you're only using those vertical lines that are nice and straight. Come nowhere near that little curved edge. You don't need to use it. You can just slide that T-square down so it's not even a factor. Don't forget about those ground floors so that our buildings don't look like they're sinking below the earth. And we've got another building in perspective. This last building that we're going to do, skip, getting ahead of myself. We are going to be doing a building on the right side now. Same exact methodology. Again, notice that I'm not using that little rounded corner of the bottom of my triangle square. I am still using a T-square and a triangle square. My T-square is just a little off the screen because I want to make sure I'm only hitting those straight edges. Remember, there are no horizontal lines in a 2-point drawing. There are only vertical and diagonal lines. And all diagonal lines must go back to one of the 2 vanishing points. So if you see a diagonal line and it's not going back to one of your 2 vanishing points, that is an issue. So we're going to do a building in the center quadrant. Now, I think this is one of our more challenging buildings to make simply because of where it falls perspectively. So T-square, triangle square, and we are going to do a vertical line up from the center of that corner, always making sure that that T-square is up against the edge of our board. We're going to make a second vertical line to the left of that first one, and a third vertical line to the right. Now we have 3 vertical lines, so we need to connect them back to some vanishing points. So for the first one, we are going to connect the center and the left line back to our right vanishing point. It's always a good idea if your other buildings are in perspective. You can look at the roof lines for those buildings and see if that helps you out. So we're going to take the right line, the center line, and line that up to our left vanishing point. There we go. Now we've got two sides of our building. I'm going to go ahead and erase the streets and the building that I can see through, just because I think it makes it easier if we're not working with extra information. Why make things harder on yourself? So erasing makes things easier in this situation. So we're going to take the top left corner and we're going to line that up to our left vanishing point. We are going to draw a line back. Then we're going to follow that with the right corner, and we are going to connect that to the right finishing point and draw a line connecting and finishing off that roof. We still have a couple more lines that we need to do here. So we're going to need another vertical line coming down from that corner, and that's going to give us our last corner of our building. I like to make this line a little bit longer than you think you're going to need, simply because sometimes it is surprising how much additional line you need, and it's far easier to erase than it is to try to reline things up. Then you're going to connect to the left vanishing point, those last two lines there on the left, and then on the right, those last two lines to the right vanishing point. And you have drawn a building in the center. Clean it up a little bit and you are finished.